Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Anthony Mead, and I'm the director of the Morlan Gallery here at Transylvania University. And with that, it is my great pleasure to be able to welcome you all, as well as our guest, Michael Mandiberg, tonight. Mandiberg is currently showing their work, Quantified Self-Portrait, One-Year Performance, in Morlan's current exhibition, Mnemonic Devices, which was curated by Transy's own Associate Professor of Art History, Dr. Emily Elizabeth Goodman. If you have not yet been to see the exhibition, I highly, highly encourage you to do so. Dr. Goodman did an incredible job curating a thoughtful and intellectually stimulating exhibition that will send you through a range of memories and emotions as you contemplate the significance that memory plays in our lives and how we share those memories with everything from objects to technologies to each other. The gallery is open Monday through Friday from noon to 5, and as well it is open especially late on November 18th from 5 to 8 p.m. for our closing reception. On that date, Dr. Goodman will also be giving a curator's talk that begins at 6 p.m. So please join us for that. If this is your first time joining us for one of our virtual artist talks, welcome. We're happy to have you. I will give you a quick rundown before turning it over to Dr. Goodman. We do have closed captioning available. If you would like to turn that on, you can take your cursor down to the bottom of the browser window and you'll find a little CC button, which will enable live closed captioning. Also down there, you will find a Q&A button. You can click that and it'll enable a chat function where you'll be able to type in your questions. You can type in those questions at any time, and we will reserve some time at the end of tonight's talk where we will read the questions to our guest. And with that, I will say enjoy the talk and turn over the microphone and the screen to Dr. Goodman for some background and introduction of our guest. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. I'm very excited for tonight's talk. Tonight's talk is also co-sponsored by the Digital Liberal Arts Initiative, of which I'm also the co-director, along with Dr. Tim Polashek. We are very excited to have Michael Mandiberg come as one of our speakers for that initiative as well, and to be a part of this exhibition. It's my pleasure to introduce Michael Mandiberg. Michael Mandiberg is an interdisciplinary artist whose work manifests the poetics and politics of the information age. Mandiberg works within systems to make visible processes that are often hidden in plain sight or on public web servers. While technically sophisticated, their projects exceed novelty to make propositions about how our lives are being shaped by these tools and the ideologies undergirding them. This non-binary approach crosses media and evades stable categorization, from large-scale installations like print Wikipedia's 7,473 books, to custom software-driven durational performance like Quantified Self-Portrait, which you can see in Morlan Gallery, to socially engaged pedagogy like the New York Arts Practicum. They co-founded Art Plus Feminism, of which we have our own annual Art Plus Feminism Wikipedia edit-a-thon, an international collaboration that takes place at the Museum of Modern Art and hundreds of venues around the world, like at Transylvania University. Mandiberg received an MFA from the California Institute of the Arts and a BA from Brown University. Their projects have been exhibited at the Whitney Museum of Art, Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the new museum, Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris, Arizona State University Museum and Library, Denny Dimon Gallery, I-Beam, and Transmedial, amongst others, and are in the permanent collections of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Stedelijk Museum, and 21C Museum. Their work has been written about widely, including in Art Forum, Art in America, Art News, the New York Times, the New Yorker, and the Wall Street Journal. Mandiberg is the recipient of the LACMA Art Plus Technology Lab Grant, 3 I-Beam fellowships, a Mellon Fellowship at the CUNY Graduate Center, and several Wikimedia Foundation grants and commissions from Rhizome and Turbulence. Mandiberg has participated in residencies at Foundry Darling, the Banff Center, I-Beam, the McDowell Colony, and the 18th Street Art Center. Mandiberg is professor of media culture at the College of Staten Island, CUNY, and doctoral faculty at the CUNY Graduate Center. Mandiberg's work lives at mandiberg.com. We are very, very grateful to have them here, and I'm going to turn the talk over to Michael Mandiberg. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, I'm Michael. Um, this is my studio. And you kind of can't tell, you can just see it. There you go. That's outside. I'm in Midtown, New York. Times Square is about 4 blocks away. The sun has set and there's construction outside my window. I'm on the 8th floor of I'm on the 8th floor of a studio building. This building is full of artist studios. It's a nonprofit called Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts. And I am painting. This is the start of a painting of the background of Emily's Zoom call before when we started. Since the pandemic began, I've been painting the backgrounds to the Zoom calls that I've been on. This has been my way of dealing with the isolation that I've experienced and trying to understand this sort of new way of seeing. We have used video conferencing for some time, but it obviously didn't, we never really experienced it the way that we'd experienced it starting in March of 2020. And I was kind of amazed by the scenes and of sort of appearing and, jumping into other people's lives and houses and looking at, frankly, the corners of their rooms and their ceilings. And missing being with people and missing people. So I started painting the Zoom calls without the people in front of them, really as a way of trying to record the feeling and the absence. I have been painting for a couple of years. I am not trained as a painter. And I took one painting class in college. I took some foundations classes and I had a pretty good high school arts education. So I did a lot of drawing. I'm not competent, but part of it is about learning for me. I started about 4 years ago, a project where I started painting portraits of all of the assistants who had worked in my studio. Most of these are a lot of these are former students of mine. The ones I'm going to show you aren't, because the ones that are students are actually bigger, and I can't get them in front of the camera quite like this. So this is Oscar Torres. He was an apprentice of mine when I was at I-Beam in 2008. And he worked on this in the background, what's represented in the background, which is a compact fluorescent light bulb laser cut lampshade that I made with a couple of other people. I was engaging in a bunch of design work at the time. And I want you to see the pixelation in the image. Can you see the pixelation around the eyes maybe a little bit? I'm going to show you another one where you can see it a lot better. What's happening here is I have a background that's printed. You can see this is grayscale and there's pixels. Taking images, compositing them together and printing them on canvas, and then I'm painting on top of them, and I'm painting them with a traditional grisaille process. I'm going to show you this one, which is a study. It's sort of more rough, and you can see the pixelation and the places where the brush is. This one was made a little bit later. It's, I think, more towards where I want it to be, where you really see the hand and the pixels. This is a study, like I said, it only has 2 glazes on it. Typically, there'll be like about 4 or sometimes 5 glazes of color. And there's a grisaille underneath. And I'm leaving with this one, I'm leaving a lot more of the pixelation and not touching the sort of the black areas. But you can see this little mark in there, little bit of highlight mark. And I also made a series of paintings. Oh, a part of that are these documents. This is I'm realizing I'm flipped, so my apologies on that. But this is a document that is a grant report from a grant that I got from the college that I teach at to pay for one of my students to work in my studio on an apprenticeship, on a research fellowship. And it's me reflecting on how much Carlo learned and also how much I learned. And this here is my color wheel for my paintings. This is a Zorn palette. This is it's a yellow ochre equivalent this is a yellow ochre equivalent that's transparent, that's called transparent earth. And this is cadmium red, and I have black over here. And so I'm following that, and these are all tints. They're tinted and glazed. The further in, the less pigment there is, the more medium there is, but also the more white. I'm using a white, I don't know if this is interesting to some of you, maybe there's some painters. I'm using a transparent white, it's a Gamblin. And this is me learning. Some of you probably have done this in your foundations class where you are challenged to make a color wheel with red. Often it's red, blue, and white, red, blue, and yellow with white and black for your tints and your shades. So this is a very, very, very basic practice. And so I am learning. This is a process of learning for me. And I've documented that. I manifest that. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share it with sound. So you all should see my screen. Someone let me know if my screen is not visible. And I am going to show you the other half of this project, which is a live, an archive of video. It's a project, an online exhibition of the Whitney Museum, where I'm actually recording every hour of my painting. I'm measuring time. The paintings themselves are sized based off of the number of hours that the assistants have worked with me. And so they are in turn sized. I'm just going to go to some finished work on the one I showed you, the larger one. They're sized based off of that. So this is a big one because Patrick worked with me for a long time. And so this is a kind of, I mean, I've learned how to paint in this process by watching YouTube videos. So this is, in some sense, my response to that, where I'm painting. The YouTube videos are kind of like a masterclass in seamless perfection and simplicity, because of course they've been practiced 10 times over before they're actually executed. And so this is me doing my best and making mistakes. And I think the best parts are when I fuck up and I swear and I get angry and I wipe it all off, in some sense, because I'm demonstrating the act of learning, like learning as a medium on some level, in this sense of, in this performance. And these were shown, you can see maybe in the small screen, these were shown this fall, last fall, actually a year ago, at the gallery I show at in New York. called Denny Dimon, and we made a catalog. And I'm going to show you some install shots from that show. Oh, no, I don't want to stop sharing. I'm going back there. I just want to stop this. And I want to go here and show you so this is the install. And you can see here's the one of Oscar. It's pretty far off. I'll show you some more detailed versions. There's the one I showed you with the study. And they were hung in clusters. And here is the video. And in the back room were the Zoom paintings. This is a selection of 49 of them. I made about 75 in total. And here's a detail of the grid. So this work doesn't come out of nowhere. The painting is kind of novel, but the overall structure of the performance carries over a lot from the work I have made. I'm going to go back to a work called Print Wikipedia. I'll make you bigger. Is what it says. I turned all of Wikipedia into books. This is in 2015. This is the German version, which I made in 2016. And you can see I made these small selections of books based off of the words on the spine that I print out. There's 7,473 volumes. They're laid out programmatically and displayed against a wallpaper that has, I'm going to skip to this one. You can see the wallpaper. The wallpaper has all of the volumes for that stretch, and they are the actual physically printed books are situated inside of where they would be in the actual set. You don't need to print the whole set, but you need to have some, because our brains can kind of connect the dots and finish it. But it's really valuable for our brains cognitively to have something to contextualize and compare it to. When I installed it the first time, you can see that I'm projecting the actual upload process. Here's the command line code that's running the process where it actually was uploading to the print on demand website. So a lot of the sort of similar, to compare this work to the live study, the painting piece, they're both on some level about counting, right? They're both on some level about understanding scale and visualizing information, making things legible that are not necessarily obvious, giving them form that is a familiar form. They're also on some level about taking information and making it legible emotionally. I think that scale does some of that work for me in a lot of my work. I'm going to show you another work. So this is something I started in 2009, and it took me about 6 years to do. And I'm going to show you another piece that I started around the same time that also took me I finished in 2016. This is a piece called FDIC Insured, where I collected the logos from failed banks that failed during the 2008 financial crisis. And I burned them onto the covers of cast-off investment guidebooks, which were, this was sort of the moment in which information was shifting from being normal as print object to normal as digital object. So people were giving away their books. These were bought from the dollar rack at the Strand bookstore. It's literally the least amount of like it's the cheapest book you could possibly buy. They're throwaways, so to speak. And they're cast off books for dead banks. And I installed them in a recently vacated office just off of Wall Street. It was on Rector Street in downtown New York. It was on the, I don't know, 13th floor or something like that. And it has, you know, brown carpeting and drop tile ceilings. And these were office rooms that I installed it in. In the aftermath of finishing those two projects, as I was finishing those two projects, I started working on two related works, one of which is in the show, and both of which were part of a project I did for LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art's Art and Technology grant for the lab there. And I'm going to show you the video of, I'm going to show you this one first. And you should be able to hear that. If you don't hear it, let me know, although the sound isn't super crucial on this one. It is on the next one. So if you've been to the show, you've seen this work, and you have seen it in maybe a little more detail. The work, there's three screens. The screen on the left is screenshots of my desktop every 15 minutes. In the center is from my webcam every 15 minutes. And on the right screen is reflective text I wrote every evening. The practice of taking screenshots of somebody's desktop and webcam was something that had just started to evolve at that moment, used to control and monitor freelance labor. It's become much more expanded since then, in the 5 years since then. And what I was trying to do is understand what it was that I did. This was sort of a effort to there's a movement of people who make who practice something called quantified self. If you have a Fitbit or a Apple Watch or one of the Android watches and you track your steps, or you monitor your heart rate, or things like that, track your exercise, these are forms of quantified self. The idea behind quantified self is that by knowing one's data, one knows oneself. You have a better understanding of yourself. It's a techno-utopian idea that is kind of aligned with the kind of California philosophy of Silicon Valley. I am somewhat critical of that, and I wanted to use it to try to, but I wanted to use it to try to understand what I did, because it felt like all I did was write emails. As an artist, the way that what one does as an artist is very different than what one might think one does as an artist, especially someone who's working with digital media. And so I kind of wanted to see what it was that I did, and I wanted to make something from that process of trying to understand that. It's a 1-year performance, and I shaved my head at the start of the year in order to mark time. It also makes it a direct reference to a work or a series of works by an artist named Tei-Ching Hsieh, who did some of this work in the late 70s and early 80s. In one case, one of the works he did was he took a frame of 16mm film every hour on the hour, and at the same time punched a timesheet in a time clock. That is the idea of a punching time clock is something that's probably foreign to most of you, though some of you have probably experienced other forms of industrial labor time management. The reality is that this is the kind of time management, labor time management that one experiences now. It's digitized, it's pervasive, it's the Amazon warehouse worker whose every step is monitored. And so this is my reflection on that. I'm going to just skip towards the end so you can see the hair get really floppy. It got really long and wild. And showed up in front of my computer or on my screen. My work is very collaborative. I work, as one of the lead organizers of Art and Feminism, we work as a collective. And I wanted to try to find a way of representing that, actually. And that's where the live study piece to some degree comes out of. The other work that I made, well, I want to go back and I want to show you the other piece that is part of that quantified self-portrait. That's quantified self-portrait 1-year performance. And I want to also show you quantified self-portrait rhythms. And this one, hopefully you can hear. So if you can't hear, someone should let me know. So this is the sound of my heartbeat for a year, matched with the sound of my email alerts. Great, we can hear everything, super. And this is the elevator that takes you to the parking garage. This is in LA speak, this is the front door. The front door is this elevator. And it was in both of the elevators. And it played for a whole year. And I'm going to escape out of that and jump over to the other project that was part of that, which is a shot-by-shot recreation of Charlie Chaplin's film Modern Times that I created by cutting up all 500 odd number of the clips in the film and individually sending them out to digital workers on the platform fiverr.com to each recreate the clips. And so I'm going to play you a 2-minute section, and you'll notice that it will, like, about every 10th or so clip will be the original as a way of sort of suturing it back to its original referent and its original narrative. So that is just a short 2-minute clip of the 90-minute film. And I am going to stop sharing for a second and show you a couple of things. One is a study score. This is the kind of book of the kind of score that somebody would study from if someone was a conductor or practicing a piece. You use the larger ones for performances, but for studying, you would just have a book like this. So to make the score for that piece, I did a process called spectral analysis, which takes the sound and it's like when you scan an image, it's like taking sound and scanning sound, except you don't turn it into a grid of pixels, you turn it into MIDI data, which is like lots of notes with the pitch and the length and the intensity and things like that. So I wanted to make a score from this that actually represented the kind of chaos of the sound. So I took all that data and then I reorchestrated that using a bunch of digital instruments in, we used GarageBand. I don't think it was Pro Tools. I could be wrong, but I think it was GarageBand. And I mean, this is humanly impossible to play. That's part of what I wanted to represent. The way in which this process is, these machines are not human, and which often is inhumane. And to do so, we actually had to write. I mean, look at that. We had to write special software to lay this out, because if you were to actually put this into the kind of automated score software that'll pull MIDI data and make a score out of it, it would stretch this out so that all these were normal length from each other. So this would almost be like, you know, half the length of this whole book. The book would have been, you know, that thick, the study score. So we wrote code that laid this out. And we, again, like I said before, I often work with assistants. This is a collaborative project. Ultimately, you can't, it's backwards. I realize that, my apologies. But I consulted with a composer named Alec Hall, who showed me how to use the tools, and Dinara Sarioglu, who's helped me over the years with code, wrote the software under my direction. So this is, it's also a way of framing the transformation that I did. A lot of the work that I do involves taking found objects, found data, found images, and turning them into something else. And this is almost a legal document showing the degree to which the sound is not the same as the original. I also made, I don't have it with me, but I made a script that has the descriptions that we sent out that describe each of the clips. I also thought I would show you a copy of print Wikipedia. This is the volume that has entropy in it, the entrance for entropy. And the cover, I'll read that back to you. It's backwards, but I'll read it to you. It's Entrails of Aversion to Environmental Determinism. And that's the first and last entry in this volume that contains entropy. Words and language is really important for my work. There's a poetics and a poetry. I think those two are slightly different, poetics and poetry, but I think of this as one very long found poem, a 7,500 volume long found poem. I also love Wikipedia. As has been mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Art and Feminism, which is a an international campaign to build community and around and work on increasing or decreasing information gaps related to gender feminism in the arts, especially focusing on Wikipedia. And it's entering its 10th year. I actually stepped down as one of the lead organizers in the last year. I was lead organizer, and then I was a lead organizer, and then I was a board member. And you can see that there's, events coming up. These are, I think we're in the planning stage for next year's events. Over the last 10 years, there's been over 100,000 articles that have been created or improved. I'm doing other research that actually looks at the changes in the gender gap over time. I've been doing some more data science related research in order to try to understand what it is that we've done. So I think that with that, I'm going to wrap up what I'm going to show you and ask you and maybe respond to your questions from here. I think that I would love to let the rest of this be driven by the questions that you all have brought to this.
Let people start to type their questions into the Q&A area, and we have one already, and it is, can you speak about where your inspiration for your new work or series come from, and perhaps what artists you look at and who you're influenced by?
Lots of questions in there. I'm gonna start by answering the last one, which was about what artists I'm influenced by, and kind of look at the way that I work and give some context for that. We've been talking, I mean, the not just the art world, but the whole world has been obsessed over the last I think it's now 2 years, obsessed with non-fungible tokens, with NFTs, with crypto kind of related work, but the history of art and technology goes back pretty far, and I actually was inspired in a large degree by some work that I saw when I was probably about your age. I was just finishing my senior year in college, and I saw an work in the Whitney Biennial that was the first internet artwork to be included in the biennial, and it was work by the work that inspired me the most from that was there's work by some artists. One was Artmark, which is now the Yes Men, and I was really inspired by, I don't remember if this was in the exhibition, but Jody.org and Olia Lialina. These are artists who were making work that existed as web pages, but was really wild, and I loved the way that it circumvented the whole process of going through galleries. It was just work that was meant to be viewed. It was site specific to your home computer. And so I was studying photography, and I came back I was a trip to New York, and I came back and I was like, I'm doing that. I'm not making photographs. I got rid of all my equipment and focused on learning how to write code. And that was a major kind of transition for me. And so, that's where a lot of some of my inspiration comes from. In terms of and the artists, I think in terms of where my no, that was the wrong move. What I'm inspired by in the work that I make now, I can actually show you a thing. No, not that. I'm gonna come here, and I want to share my screen again.
While you pull this up, I have a quick and easy one. Are you painting with oils or acrylic right now?
Oil, non-toxic. I use Gamblin. I clean my brushes with just canola oil and soap. And I'm using, I could get really, really, really nerdy about the printing process if someone wants me to, but let me focus for half a second on finding this. So I discovered another way that I often work is I see something as a tool, and I think about what I want to make with that tool, things that would not normally be considered like artists' tools. So I recently discovered that there are artificial intelligence paraphrasing software that are used they weren't originally designed for this, but they're frequently used by students to plagiarize, because it allows students to take a text and run it through the paraphrasing software, and it comes out the other end written in a way that Turn It In won't be able to catch. And so I was fascinated by this, and fascinated by the kind of malapropisms that it creates, like translating the United States into the agglomeration of nations, or specific heat into particular temperature. So it's kind of does some kind of amazing things with language, and I just was like, I want to make something with this. I want to make something with this. I want to make something with this. What am I going to make with this? And so I thought about it for quite a bit of time and was like, oh, I want to, I was channeling the approach I took with postmodern times to some degree. I was like, what can I translate? What can I take and work from? I was like, oh, I should take a novel. What novel? What novel? What novel? What novel? What novel? I was like, oh, well, I thought about all of the bad robot novels, but they're mostly actually movies, 2001, and those kinds of films, The Matrix. And then I thought about transformations. I thought about Kafka's Metamorphosis. The problem with Kafka's Metamorphosis is it's already a translation. And so which one do you use? And that first sentence seems to matter so much. So wasn't really satisfied with that. I was thinking, and and it's like, okay, well, what about novels? What are the great American novels? And I was going through the list, and I was just like, oh, Gatsby. The Gatsby is like the quintessential novel about American fraud and lying, and how and the American dream and its fraudulent nature. But it's also the book that is the most plagiarized essays have been turned in based on, because it's the most assigned book. So this is a kind of way that my thinking happens.
We have another question as well for you, Michael.
Great.
Somebody asks, you seem very prolific. Can you talk about how you manage your time or energy and stay motivated?
I've always made a lot of stuff. I've always been prolific. That's just in some way the way I've been. So it's not like I know what makes one do that. I can't give you that secret. I find it hard not to be compelled to make things. So that's one non-answer. The other answer, which is maybe a non-answer, but I think is useful, is that one of the things that I learned, I'm sharing this with you all because I think it's relevant to where you are all at as, as young people. I'm old now, as much as I would like to think otherwise. When I was in, straight out of undergrad, I spent a year. I wrote code. That's how I supported myself. I worked for actually IBM, which is kind of hilarious. And because I wasn't formally trained, it was weird. Anyway, whatever. That's a side point. That's not important. What I want to say is that I quit that job after maybe, I think it was 4 months, because I needed to focus my energy on a body of work, a project, which I didn't show you, but it's called Shop Mandiberg. And because it was what I was applying to grad school with. And I didn't have the time. And I also thought that I would be able to get another job. And I was treating this as if it was as if it were freelance. That was my idea. And it was right when the dot-com crash happened, where it became very, very difficult to get a job. But I managed to get one. I managed to get another one, and a third one. And then I did go to graduate school after that. But what I learned was that I was terrible at freelancing. I mean, just terrible at it. I got the next job. I would get the job, but I couldn't let go of my anxiety about whether I was going to get the next job, so that I could actually focus on using the time that I had to make something new. So what I learned in that moment was that I, as a person, I am much better at juggling time than I am at juggling money. And that was a really important lesson that I learned. And I think, you know, I have peers, I have friends who are the opposite. They're much better at juggling money, and they need all of the time. And, you know, they are quite comfortable not being 100% confident where their next freelance gig is going to come from. And that's not me. I learned that I can't do that. And so I've structured my life accordingly. I have a full-time teaching job. Teaching takes, you know, probably depending on the semester, it takes between 25 and 45 hours a week. Realistically, sometimes I got a good semester and sometimes I don't. That gives me a structure around which I am working and managing and juggling my time. And to some degree, that involves, for me, working with assistants, because I, again, don't have time. I have a salary, which is sometimes enough, although within the inflation, it's become challenging. It's sometimes enough to bring in someone to help me with things. So if I were a different person, I would handle this differently.
I'm going to bring another question in here, and it's one that's not in the chat, but it's one that I've been wondering about. And you started to maybe touch on it slightly with that last answer, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because you mentioned anxiety, and I've noticed that in several pieces there seems to be a feeling of anxiety that exists. I think of quantified self-portrait, which I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time around in the gallery, and how quickly it goes, which, you know, just like such rapid content can be anxiety producing. Or I think of the other quantified self-portrait of the heart beating, and just that rhythm of the heart beating can be very anxiety producing. So I wonder how it is that you think about anxiety or mental health in relationship to your work.
So that's an interesting question. I think about emotion generally, I think. And so the way that I have thought it through is thinking about the way in which I am creating work that sort of gives emotionally legible form to experience, to information, to data. I have a whiny dog. You want to come here, little whiny? No, he wants to run away. Okay. And I think anxiety is probably the overwhelming and overriding feeling of our time. So I think that You, Mercs, come here. You don't get to whine like that. You can make a cameo. You want to make a cameo? Do you want to make a cameo? Let me move this out of the way and you can make a cameo. This is Mercs. Yes, are you the whiniest dog? So Mercs is a bolster against anxiety, although sometimes he whines when he's ready to go home. So I think that you know, I mean, the last 2.5 years have been just you know, an experience of, you know, really substantial trauma, and you know, my students, there's good studies that show that, you know, the degree to which we're now dealing with sort of an extended, you know, post-traumatic, you know, stress disorder. You know, my students at CUNY, before the pandemic, 30% of them were experiencing anxiety, depression, and afterwards it's like 65 or 70%. So this is you know, we're living in a state of climate catastrophe, and increasing economic inequality, political polarization. What's not to be depressed about? And for me, making things is a grounding process for me, and it's to some degree my way of making it through, and understanding the things. Yeah. Other questions?
We are at 7 o'clock, but I think we may have time for the last question that's in the chat or in the Q&A box. So I'm going to ask that, which is actually on a totally different note. Were all of the books for Wikipedia printed, or just a few? Or how did the walls? How did the walls look like a library of Wikipedia books?
I did not print all of them. It's not necessary to print them all. It would be a bit much, I think. Also, I printed a selection. There's typically about I don't know, 50 or 60 or so per exhibition that get printed, and I've printed some other individual ones. I think probably you know, 300-400 books have been printed in total. And I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question.
Yeah, I kind of read it as it was worded, so I don't have much more to it.
Okay, but I think that helps answer the first bit of it.
Well, I do, as much of your talk has kind of focused on considering notions of time, I do want to be mindful of everybody's time and take this as an opportunity to thank you, Michael, for coming and speaking to us today and for agreeing to be a part of this exhibition. I have been following your work actually for a bit, especially since we do an edit-a-thon at Transy. And so it was very wonderful to actually get to hear you talk about some of the projects that I've been looking at and teaching in some of my courses as well.
Excellent. Well, it's always weird in the seminar format because I'm not seeing any of you all. And you know, it would have been great if we were in a world where I could have come in person, but the pandemic is still pretty solid, and I'm immunocompromised and also caring for someone who is you know, I'm caring for someone who's really vulnerable. So I'm unfortunately not able to come in person, but I'm glad to have been included in the exhibition. And yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun painting like this when it's live. It's kind of a challenge. like, that's wrong. That's the wrong line. That's got to come that way.
Yeah. It is surreal, I will say, watching you paint my living room.
Yeah, it's your living room. Although you're in a different room now. So
I am. Yep.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well,
Thank you so
have a
much.
good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone.
And hopefully you and your pup get to go home pretty soon. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish this painting, and he's sitting on my lap. He's right here on my lap. He's calm once he's on my lap. He's not whining anymore.
Well, I would love to see the finished painting when you're done.
Okay, I'll send you all a photo.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Good
Have a
night,
good evening.
everyone.
Yep.
For joining.
Good night.